Here are 5 key phrases you need to know and understand when investing in buy-to-lets wherever they are, so you can understand the returns you're getting into and the numbers associated. So number 1 is GDV, so gross development value. And now the simplest way to put this is the value of a property once you've renovated it. So if you come in, if you're buying a rundown property, for example in South Wales where I live, you're getting a rundown property, you renovate it, the GDV is the value of the property after you've renovated. It's the gross development value once you've developed said property. And it's really, really important to know that, because if you're using the BRR model to purchase a property, to renovate your, to recycle your cash and your funds, you need to know the end value, because a lender will use that end value to base their refinance upon. So when they come to lend against it on a 75% loan to value mortgage, they'll use that figure to basically work against, to make sure that they're actually lending you the accurate amount from their point of view, to see what the property's actually worth, to get your lending sorted out pretty much. And the second reason this is actually really important for this figure is if your property is in a good location, if you invested well and your GDV is, for example, 130, like for example in South Wales it's going to be 130k on a very typical values property, the GDV that is, then if you've got appreciation of, for example, 4 to 5% over that period, over the next 5 years, that 130k GDV is what's going to increase. So it's really important to know that figure, so that once you've done your renovation, you know what the property's worth after the renovation, and you can base your appreciation off that figure as well. Word number 2 is contingency. Now, a bit of a random word, I'm not going to lie, but it's really relevant and extremely good for protection. Now, whether this comes to refurbs or whatever it may be, typically this comes into renovations because you add contingency on top of a builder's quote to make sure that you got adequate protection. So for example, I'm going to overlay a project at the end of this video so you can kind of connect all these 5 words into one. You can kind of see in a real situation how they actually work and come together. But for example, this one, if you've got a project and you've got a 20k refurb quote on it, for example, and you've got a 10% contingency, that means that a builder's come into the property and they've said the renovation quote that they expect the cost to be, not that they're fixed on it, that they expect the cost to be based upon their initial viewing will be £20,000, and you've got a 10% contingency, you're giving yourself £2,000 worth of additional cost that could be increased. So over that project, so you're expecting the cost to actually be in total £22,000, so that, because things go wrong in property all the time, so you're at least protecting yourself, so if something does go wrong, you've got a bit of security there, and you've budgeted in that security to make sure that at the end of the renovation, you're not having a panic because you haven't actually included it into your cost as a hypothetical security budget, if that makes sense. So contingency is really important, especially for renovations. Next one, number 3, is actually 2 in 1. So I would say gross to net income, and typically we base this off the rental side. So for example, if we're doing a 3-bed in South Wales, for example, you typically going to expect as a really rough figure here, £800 per calendar month. And that could be gross, well, that will be your gross monthly income. That means a tenant is going to pay you as a landlord, well, technically pay the letting agent, £800 per calendar month. They take off their fees, blah, 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 blah. The point is, what the tenant pays, what they believe they're paying to you, but actually paid to the letting agent, is £800 per calendar month. Now, the net monthly income will actually be all your costs taken away from that. So if you're £800 per calendar month coming in, gross that is, from the tenant, taking away your management, maintenance, if you've got any voids, if you've got insurance, obviously your mortgage, all these other costs, take it all off. The net monthly income is what actually is the most important one to you as the landlord, as the investor. That's the most relevant one to you, because it shows you what your actual money into the bank at the end of the month actually will be after all costs. So that's your net cost, that's your net income after all costs, and it shows the true profit. So obviously this is before tax, different conversation, before tax, but in terms of your actual income every month, that's what's going to come into your bank after everything, and that is what you actually have to use for whatever you wish, whatever you want to use the cash flow for. But that's the most relevant to you because it shows what you're actually going to get in the bank at the end of every month. Number 4 is also a bit of a random one, I'm not going to lie, but it's something that is overlooked quite often. It's amenities. And it's not something that you immediately jump into investing and think, oh, amenities, what you know, how can I fix it upon these? But to be honest with you, amenities, they relate, because for a buy-to-let landlord, to have invested in the right location, to have the right typical tick boxy situation here where you invested in a said location, you've got the right amenities around them, it allows a tenant to actually want to stay there. So amenities are going to be your shops, they're going to be everything they need. So transport links, they're going to be your, so typically you've got transport links, you've got schools, you've got shops, you've got working locations, so industrial sites and all that kind of stuff, places where people can actually come to work and actually live there, because you want a tenant to come to your buy-to-let property, stay there for at least the next 3 to 5 years on average, make it their home. And for that you need these basic concepts for people to have kids, to grow their family, schools, transport links, commute to work, and etc. They've got working opportunities, so industrial sites and all these kind of things, and shops, food, and obviously pubs, local community, right? But all these basic amenities can get overlooked. You know, obviously you want to make sure there's nothing crazy like flood risk or anything, but that's a different conversation anyway. But to this point of this word, amenities can get overlooked because you might invest in a town, but the town might not have everything you need. So for example, we invest heavily in the valleys in South Wales for ourselves and for our clients. And if you're not investing in a location that has these 4 basic requirements, we're not even factoring in crime rates and flood risk and all that in this conversation, but just for the basic needs from a tenant point of view, like, it's really important to factor those in. So I'm not going to ramble too much on this to bore you, but it's more of a case of saying just be aware of that, to factor in what an investment, it has to appreciate, it has to be in a good location to appreciate as a buy-to-let, but it also has to be in a location that has the basic amenities there for a tenant to want to come in and actually want to make it their home, not just for short term, but for as long as possible. Ideally 5 years, typically 3. Lots of our tenancies are normally about 3 years, which is quite fair because the family wants to come in, make it their home for a bit, save up enough deposit, and then move on. That's totally understandable, fair enough, it's very common. The best to last, and number 5 is actually ROCE, or return on capital employed. Now, typically, this gets confused a lot with ROI, which is return on investment, and the irony is they're pretty much the same thing. Like, in fact, there's no real difference in them. Return on investment is the generic way of saying ROCE to a point. So for example, ROI is going to be return on investment, where money in, money out. So what is your return you're getting on your money put in at the start? And to keep it simple, that's the most simplistic way of putting it. You put money into an investment, what's the return, and what's the percentage of money coming back in terms of profits on top of that money you originally put in. ROCE is not much different. The way it's calculated is a little bit different, but just for context on this, ROCE, so return on capital employed, is just the property professional way of saying return on investment, because it's still calculating the money put into a project, so literally the money put in, compared to the net return you're getting on the back end. So I can go through the complications of the calculations and how that works, but I don't want to bore you on it. The simple way to put it just for this video is return on capital employed is exactly the same as return on investment, because you're still working out what your return is on the capital inputted into the investment, what your return back is, your net return that is. So the way it's calculated is a little bit differently, but the exact same logic is applied, and the actual return is always the same anyway. So yeah, hope that makes sense, and hope that it clarifies that one. We have had quite a few clients this week asking about that kind of stuff and have confusions with it, but the simplest way to put it is return on capital employed is the property professional's way of saying return on investment. So I'm actually going to tie up this video at the end with an example, because at the end of the day, I can go around all these examples, all these hypothetical wordings and etc. But I think it helps a lot of people if I give a real world example, a live example almost, of all these words formulated together. As you can see an example of how it all gets packaged together. So I'll try to go in order, but I may not stick to it. So, for example, a client at the moment is proceeding in South Wales for us with a project for £62,500. That's the purchase price of it. So they're buying a property for 62 grand. That's a very standard cost in South Wales, very standard BR deal. The renovation quote came in at £22,000. So we expect the cost, including contingency, to come in at £24,000. So build quotes come in at £22,000. We expect the actual renovation cost to be £24,000, and anything less at the back end is a bonus. Anything hitting that target is expected. Anything more, we should have pre-planned better. But in theory, for a 22k refurb, there's only really so much you can go wrong, because it's quite a baby refurb, to be honest to do. I say baby from my perspective. So full renovation is like 34k, so it gives a bit of perspective. Anyway, the GDV, so gross development value, is £110,000. So yeah, literally once we renovated it, so we bought for 62.5 grand. We got a bit of a discount there, which is obviously why we buy rundown properties in South Wales. The GDV via the property once renovated expected to be 110. So we've used comparables data for that, collected a lot of actual sold comparable data for that, and we're quite confident of that. So that's what we expect the property value to be once we renovate it. The gross rental income is expected to be £775 per calendar month. Typically it might be a bit less, but we're being a bit optimistic in the current rental market because the market is so strong. It's absolutely ridiculous at the moment. Property prices in South Wales have gone up, and so rental prices as well. So the demand's gone up because there's only so many houses and people flooding over. So that's really good, but a different conversation anyway. So yeah, gross rental income 775. The net monthly income of the buy-to-let once it's actually renovated and tenanted and cash flowing will be expected to be £250. So after management, maintenance, any void periods, all these mortgage costs, all these costs, including insurance as well, all those bits, you're expecting a net monthly income for the client of £250 per calendar month. And I think that's about 3 grand a year. So from one single let, you're getting 3 grand. So you imagine get 10 properties, you can literally get 30 grand a year. That's the power of property, right? But different conversation. Then you've got amenities. So hopefully this is in order. You've got amenities. So it's in a town centre, close to transport links, shops, got a pub locally, got a school locally. Obviously got the train station for transport links, which is great. And it's close to industrial estate, so good for jobs as well. And it's probably about 20 minutes away from Cardiff Central as well. So it's kind of like the transport link is one good thing, but how close location-wise is to something that appeals to people. If it's only half an hour away from a city centre, that's a lot of appeal too, because you can be in a town centre, but have the connection to a city centre, which is going to help the appreciation. So that's good. And the ROI, the return on investment, or return on capital employed, is going to be 20%. Typically we do 18% in the first year. That's our kind of go-to for clients, just for clarity on what we do as a service when we help clients. But typically, yeah, looking at 18% typically. This one's 20%. We can hit 22 if the refurb comes in lower, but we're expecting a 20% ROI. So long story short, if you imagine the bank is giving you, for example, 4%, and you can invest in property in the first year alone, you're making at least 18%. That's crazy. That's literally like 5 times, which is absolutely nuts. So this is the power of property when you do it right. And this is why people come to us, because we do this day in, day out. We've currently got over 15, we've got I think about 20 projects and renovations, about 15 in conveyancing right now. Conveyancing being legals, so going through purchase right now, whether it's for ourselves or for other clients. And the accumulation of that means we've got the team, the builders, solicitors and brokers, and the team within South Wales to help people get into property. Obviously these videos are more of an educational basis, but if you want to get invested in property and you like projects like this where you can get high returns, work with us to build a portfolio, or just get returns from property anyway, from a low risk point of view, we can work with that as well. But a lot of it is booking a call with us to continue that, to say, okay, I'm in this position here, how can I help you get this position here in 5 years time where I want to get to? Long story short, if you want to get investing into property, but you don't know how to or don't know where to start, but you have capital available, definitely reach out to us. I'll put our website in the comment section in the description of the video, and you'll be able to book a call in through that link. Go on the website, book a call in with us, and then we can have a chat. There's no pressure on the call, but it's more of a case of just saying, how can we help you? Because that's one thing I absolutely love about what we do. It's literally to sit down and say, look, how can I help you kind of get to where you're trying to get to? Or how can I help you guide you in a way that's going to help you know your options within property based upon where you are now? So reach out, and looking forward to hearing from everyone. Subscribe, like the video, and if you like content on this, be sure to comment as well.